I have spent most of my life in extraordinary communities of women. I had the privilege of going to an all-girls middle school and high school. I majored in women's studies at UNLV. After graduate school, I taught women's studies for a number of years, and for the last 3 years, I have been the founder and director of the Influencer Academy Women's Leadership Program. I know how game-changing a women's leadership development experience can be because I am the product of them. But at the same time, I know that too often, women's leadership development experiences do not facilitate the full impact that they are intended to. While in the United States, finally, the gender pay gap is beginning to close. More and more companies are beginning to discuss unconscious gender bias and address it. One of the chief realms where we have yet to make enough of an impact, we are still struggling to ensure that more women step up and say that they feel ready to lead, and we have not fully created an environment where when women do lead, they are perceived to be as effective as men. A couple of years before I began the Influencer Academy Leadership Program, I had the opportunity to be the closing keynote speaker for a prestigious social enterprise conference. I arrived a little bit early, just in time for the participants' pitch fest. And each of the approximately 100 young people had a couple of minutes to present their big idea for how to harness entrepreneurial solutions to solve a big social, economic, or environmental problem. And the pitches were good. I'm being a little too critical. The pitches were really good. They were bold, they were well-researched, they were full of heart. The finalists were voted on by the other young people in the room, 50% female, 50% male, the average age 25. And I share these details with you so that you can appreciate why, when the finalists were announced, I was sure I must have heard incorrectly, because every single one of them was male. I asked the audience, what just happened? Where are the voices of our young women? And what I heard was sobering. Both the young women and the young men said that they picked based on who was the best pitcher, meaning who projected confidence, who took up space, what we would say is a more masculine model of delivery. And yet, when I asked, who are the speakers that you felt most connected to, whose ideas you wanted to champion, I kept hearing the names of women. Why? Because it was the female speakers, I was told, who told stories, who admitted where they still needed to learn, who were vulnerable, who facilitated trust. Lakshmi Balachandra, currently an associate professor of entrepreneurship at Babson College, talks about this very problem in her research. An expert on the role of gender in acquiring early-stage funding, Balachandra has discovered that there are 3 chief criteria that investors look for when making decisions about whose ideas to fund. First, they look for confidence. Second, they look for comfort level. And third, they look for passionate enthusiasm. Notably missing from this, the experience, the qualifications of the person pitching, as well as even the content of the pitch. Now, to be sure, confidence, comfort level, and passionate enthusiasm have tremendous gender implications for women who are seeking to access capital for their startups, for women who are seeking to lead companies or even countries. Whether because of biology, sociology, or more likely a combination of the two, when men step up to perform the functions of leadership, they are perceived to be more leader-like. And we know from myriad research that when women do step into leadership positions, irrespective of rank, they frequently report that they don't feel prepared to lead. Now, here's the good news. There is one critical pivot we can make in how we design women's leadership programs that gets to the very root of why more women are not positioning themselves for leadership and why, when they do step up to lead or to speak, they are often perceived to be lacking in confidence, comfort level, and passionate enthusiasm. We can, and I would argue we must, give women and even girls opportunities to get up on their feet and to practice the real-world leadership competencies that too often they simply haven't been able to perform. When women are given the coaching and the feedback as they are practicing these skills, they develop self-confidence and they're able to transfer their new skill set into higher leadership aspirations and into higher performance. How do I know that this is true? I've seen it firsthand, especially through Influencer Academy. Because when women boost their sense of worthiness, their ambition, and their aptitude, miraculous things happen for them, for their companies, and for this community. From learning how to play nicely with the sensation that comes up when presenting their ideas on stage, to choosing the words as well as the nonverbal body language to have a difficult conversation. The women in experiential women's leadership programs graduate prepared to lead. And the foundation of that leadership success, rehearsal and role play. The first time that I can remember stepping into my moxie, practicing the very important leadership skill of feeling the fear and taking action anyway, I was 4 years old. It was Christmas, and every year my parents would have a big old shindig. My dad owned his own company, and he would invite over his employees and our extended family and friends and neighbors. And this particular Christmas, everybody had gone home. My parents had gone to sleep, and I lay in my bed, praying harder than perhaps I had ever or would ever pray again, because I had made a promise to keep a secret. And although this was back in the day before that expression, snitches get stitches, I still had a sense that if I spoke up, there would be serious consequences. And yet I also knew that if I didn't, my life would be over. And so I got myself up out of bed, I walked across the hall to my parents' bedroom, I woke them up, and I told them what I know as the mom of a toddler girl has got to be the worst thing that a parent could hear, that I was being sexually abused. I wish that I could tell you that that initial act of moxie laid the foundation for a lifetime of speaking up and out, but it didn't. Because not everybody in my family was ready for that difficult information, and not everybody in my family sought to protect me like my mother did. But what I can tell you with almost absolute certainty is why, at just 4 years old, I did speak up. I spoke up because I had the words to do so. Let me explain. A few years before my daughter was born, my mother and I were going through some old photographs and memorabilia, and I stumbled upon an article that was ripped from a parenting magazine about how do you talk to your children about what constitutes safe touch. And more importantly, the article detailed how do you have that conversation with your child so that if they are in that situation, they do speak up. On that article was my mother's handwriting, indicating that she had had that kind of conversation with me. I spoke up because my mother had given me the words to do so and had made me feel safe. Melinda French Gates has said that a woman with a voice is by definition a strong woman, but the search to find that voice can be remarkably difficult. For most women around the world, it is. I would bet that for most women in this room, it has been. But it doesn't have to be. We can, again, I would argue we must, give women opportunities to illuminate, cultivate, and practice using their voices in companies, in our community, and certainly in their families. And that is work that I feel so blessed to be able to do each and every day. Thank you.